So
We're live.
I just want to make sure I still have issues.
Froze right up.
Rose right up.
That's okay. Mahan will be right
We're having
with us.
fun.
That's right.
Well, again, everyone. Here we are again, talking about another chapter of the book, People Come First, live with special guest Mahan Tavakoli. And we've got him back. And my co-authors, Linda Ventris-Nichols and John Chapelier and Jenny Langren. Welcome, Mahan. I'm looking forward to our time today.
Can you get through?
You're on.
Is it
He's on
working?
mute. Mahan, you're on mute. There you go.
He's good. Can you? Is it working for you, Mahan?
No,
Right.
he's frozen again. So
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Mahan is unable to accept the award. So accepting it for him.
There he is.
There he is.
He's got a
Maybe.
smile, but gone again.
I think he was like telling you it wasn't working good.
Like
Give
micro
him some
moment.
time.
It's hey, there, wait, there he is.
Wait for it. Wait for it. Is it working, Mahan? He might not be able to hear us.
The honesty will be if it's working, then it will be. We can talk about honesty. If not, you cannot be honest with me and tell me everything looked great. The conversation worked beautifully. I don't know what it is with StreamYard, but my system doesn't get along with it. We'll try to do our best, and feel free to move on. My apologies ahead of time.
No, go for it. What's coming up for you with honesty? Let's start with you. Mahan, what do you when you think of honesty?
Well, it's going to be interesting having it. Yeah, the funny thing about it is, Linda, in terms of relationships, trust is built on that honesty. And one of the things that I find is that we care even more about benevolence than the honesty. So I want to tell you a quick story. So if right now I invited any of you and told you we have an appointment to go to, you didn't want to come with me, and I take you with me anyway, and it ends up being a surprise party for you, I was not honest, but you still appreciate my intentions in wanting to do the best thing for you. So I just want to put honesty in context, in that we care most about the intentions behind that honesty or dishonesty. A lot of times when people are being dishonest with us, especially in the work environment, it's because it's to their benefit rather than to our benefit. So I want to put that in context. Yes, honesty is really important. We value that honesty above competence. However, we value benevolence above honesty. Why was this person honest or not honest with me?
That's so yummy. I love that. And it gets me thinking about child development. And by age 4, children are learning to lie. And we get to be very, very careful how we handle that. Because they're expert liars by the time, they're 18, they get through their teen years, right? And honoring that is very important, because lying is going to keep them alive in the world. Like, think about the movies where, some bank robber, captures all the people at the bank, and there's a lot of lying that goes on to sneak around the bank robber to, break free or whatever. So I love that. Yes, I agree. Putting it in context is huge.
Yeah, and also, again, from an organizational perspective, Linda, since that's where most of my focus is, a lot of leaders and managers overemphasize competence, and they don't realize that we do value honesty above that competence. So the analogy I use is, if we need to get a surgery, and we seek out a great surgeon. I live not too far away from Johns Hopkins University, one of the top hospitals in the country, or arguably in the world. And we find the top surgeon for our need. However, when we want to make an appointment with that top surgeon, let's say they're a friend of a friend, we talk to them, they say, I can't see you tomorrow because I'm really busy, I have lots of appointments. And we end up running into that person on the golf course or out shopping. We are much less willing and likely, even though we know they're highly competent, to want to choose that surgeon because they lied to us, right? So we value honesty above competence. Not that competence isn't important, but in a workplace, the mistake a lot of leaders and managers make is that they focus purely on competence.
Right.
And they think that can carry them through. So honesty above competence and benevolence above honesty.
That's good.
Whoa, we picked the right guy for this special guest on
this is going to be fun. John.
I told you it's not just the looks. I'm trying to look as much as I can like John. It's not just the looks. Sorry, Jenny, to have you feel left out. You know, you've got beautiful hair. Those of us who are bald are jealous.
That's right. It's my cosmic hair. No, I mean, Mahan's exactly right. I just never put labeling on it like that. And it's really helpful to have the labeling because it helps you remember it. But I mean, you know, this is sort of like a more simplistic version would be, do I look fat in this? I mean, you know, it's the kind of thing where it's the best thing to do is to say something that's not necessarily honest, but saving the person's feelings. And so again, we're going back to emotion, and engaging emotion in leadership is the key ingredient that I work on, because again, having a new book on how to do something which teaches your confidence has nothing to do with whether or not you're trustworthy or whether or not you're honest or whether or not you're welcoming to encourage the person to want to do anything with you or for you. And we were talking about this early on, which is just helping somebody, and this was Jenny's line, which is sort of nudging people towards good behavior. And if a person is working in an organization that they feel is treating them in a positive way or making a channel for their success, then they begin to trust. But you're right, it can get violated very much so by not being trustworthy. I can tell you how many times I've sat in workshops that I've done and said, how many people in here have ever had a boss tell them, trust me? And, you know, everybody's hand goes up. And then I ask them, how many times has that trust been violated? And everybody's hand goes up again. And so I ask them, well, how did it feel the next time somebody said, trust me? So, it's just like, well, we just wrote it off. We didn't trust them anymore. So, really and truly, one of the things I used to teach people early on is never promise something you absolutely can't guarantee will be delivered, because a promise is a violation of trust. And so, if I'll do the best I can, or there are a lot of factors that I have to get in line before I can make this, but I'm going to make this happen, I promise. Then people begin to back up and believe what you're saying. And if it's not guaranteed, you ought to really make sure you're qualifying that to stay on the side of your competence and your honesty and your benevolence.
Very nice. Very nice. Jenny, want to hop in?
Absolutely. Going back to what Mahan said about intentions. Also, honesty without care is brutality. I often get to work with clients who cross boundaries with other people and make them feel less than. And they will tell me that, well, I'm just being honest. That's just the way I am. And we get to have that conversation with the intentions behind your words. Like, what is the purpose of you saying that? What is the outcome that you are choosing? So I love that phrase, that honesty without care is brutality. And sometimes that will bring people perspective and make them mindful of, it's not just knowing what they believe is true, or it's not just about knowledge and competence, it's about the wisdom of how I use that in different situations. And leadership is about leading people the way they need to be led. So it's so much about listening and knowing understanding the moment and being present with this conversation and what needs to be said in this moment. With that being said, I believe that our authenticity, which is honesty to me, having the courage to be who we are and express ourselves and use our voices, is a gift to the people around us. So then when I work with clients who are scared to show up and scared to have their thoughts and their opinions known, I let them know that for them to call matters by their true name and be real and genuine and show themselves, they ground other people in the reality of who they are. And that's a gift to the people around them, for them to be able to make up their own choices in the relationship, etc. So many angles to honesty. Thank you, Mahan.
Wow.
Jenny thinks that plays a big role.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, Mahan.
He's frozen up again, Jenny.
Yeah.
Oh. Mahan says intention plays a huge role in how we think of honesty or lack thereof. Excellent.
Well, the issue with that to me is, my intention is great as long as I follow that through with my behavior. We talk about that in Daily 6 all the time, because it's, setting an intention in the morning. But if we're not doing something to continue to remind us that our intention is to be honest, or it's to be sincere, or to be appreciative of other people's perspectives, or whatever it might be, unless we're doing that, then the intention just kind of goes by the wayside. As soon as we hit conflict, old behavior appears immediately, because it's where we're safe. We're safe back in, we open our mouths and our mother falls out, kind of thing. And it's things we said, we swore when we were younger. I'm never going to say that to somebody, kind of thing. And it's just under stress, I remember seeing a speaker once had an orange in his hand. He said, if I squeeze this, and he started to squeeze it, what do you think is going to come out of it? And of course, everybody said orange juice. And he said, that's exactly what happens with you. Whatever's inside is going to come out under pressure. Have you got peace and goodwill towards all here? Or do you have manipulation and be as good as I need to be to get by? Because one of those two is going to come out under the pressure of everyday life.
I love that, John. And that brings me to the value of doing our inner work as leaders, and how that, like, authenticity to me is consistency in behavior. It means that I will show up the same way when I'm sitting in the boardroom and when I'm standing in the line at the grocery store, because I did my inner work and I keep pulling from the same well. So the water that I share is just going to be the same. And that makes people feel safe around us, because it's predictable. They know us. They know what's going to come at them, and are more able to find pleasure in the work. I'm so glad that Mahan is with us again.
When I'm trying to play Where's Waldo, every once in a while I pop in and I pop out.
You just need a little red and white striped hat, Mahan. That's all you need.
Exactly. This way I find out whether you're paying attention or not. Thank you. All we can do is laugh about this. But anyway, I appreciate the focus that we are having. If I lag, just kick me out. I'm all good with it, but really appreciate the conversation, because I think it's really important at this point in time for a lot of different reasons, including I've been very fascinated for the past few years, but especially past year, with the amount of impact that generative AI will have on our interactions, including deep fakes, where right now You can easily have my voice or any of our voices say whatever we wanted to say. Video images that are not far behind. We will face this in 2024 election, where you can have any candidate say things that they didn't really say. So our question of what is trustworthy ends up depending much more on our relationship and our understanding of the individual, because we can no longer trust what we hear or what we see from people we haven't interacted with. So I truly believe the need for those deeper relationships and the honesty that comes from the trust that I know I've built, whether it's with Terry or Linda or Jenny or John over the years, becomes even more important as a result of artificial intelligence. So honesty, but dependent on that person and the intentions we give to that person. John was mentioning, I'll say one other thing. John was mentioning someone asks, how do I look in this dress or this shirt? And by the way, John, you look as fit as ever in that shirt.
Still my beating heart.
Yeah, it's like, I can see the pecs and the, shoulders, everything.
That's fantastic. That's all stitching. It's Susan stitches it like that. So she even stitched me a 6-pack down here, but yeah, I had to stand up for you to see it. So, yeah.
But part of it is the intention, right? So when we ask someone, how do I look, whether they say good or not good, it's the intention we assume they have, which is based on the relationship, right? So if it's a strong relationship where we know the person has our best intention at heart, whether we look good or not, we are okay with the level of honesty they choose to have. If the intention we assume is not positive, even though we know they are being honest when they tell us, no, this shirt doesn't look good, we get offended because of their intention. So yes, honesty is important, becomes even more important in the age of AI, but the relationships, the intention, that humanity becomes even more important.
Let me just say that when you were off just a minute ago, Jenny was talking about that. She was talking about, the concept of consistency, to the point where somebody could say, that clearly doesn't sound like something John would say, or that doesn't sound like something that does not sound like something Jenny would ever do. But you have to be able to be really consistent in the way in which you behave. Otherwise, there is no, one day you're outgoing, next day you're introverted, next day you're angry or you're profane or whatever it might be. But if you be the same person, I think, what was the analogy you used, Jenny? Drinking the water from the same well all the time, so that people understand what you're getting. And intention works just fine as long as you're consistent. I've told leaders this for years and years and years, is that consistency is every bit as important as all the other stuff, because you can do all the other things and be very inconsistent, and the trust goes out the window. So I didn't mean to quote you without you had a chance for rebuttal, Jenny. Sorry.
Yes, we get to pull from the same well, and it comes from actually having or doing consistently our inner work, so that we are pulling from our true core, so to speak, which is a process that's just ongoing. Also, this conversation brings me to intentions and filters. And I often bring up the example that if my intention in a conversation is to understand you, if my intention is connection, you can have a bad day, you can say the wrong things, I will still look for the opportunities for us to meet. On the other hand, if my intention and my filter is to position myself above you, to find my place in a position of power, then you can say all the right things or you can't. You get where I'm going.
Sure.
And You can show up your best self, and I will find flaws, and I will look for ways to disconnect us. And we are in no means in control of other people's filters, only our own. So we get to come back to, what is my intention in this conversation? What is my intention in my leadership? And yeah, it's very exciting. Thank you.
I think this is all on point. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the bobblehead in the room. I do have a voice. Just it hasn't come up yet, right? So yeah, very true, and on point. This is a fabulous conversation, and in that, with our media is the way it is right now. We have our phones and everything like that. I've said this a million times. My phone is every bit as powerful as my laptop, and that gives us new challenges to deal with. And that being, we have friends with farther and farther and farther distance. I have Jenny, dear friend, and little sister in Stockholm, Sweden. John's down in Florida. Mahan's up in DC. Got the wife nearby. But we are growing energetically closer, because we're relying less on the physical factor to determine what we're doing. And, as far as friendships and trust and honesty with people, and we get to learn new ways of checks and balances with people that we interact with. Do I believe this person? Never seen him before, never shook their hand. None of the traditional things that this old boy right here started his life with. If you didn't shake hands, we don't have a connection. Right. Or there is absolutely no trust here if you don't shake my hand, because that connects us to a contract. Well, that's no longer true. I had a fabulous conversation with a dear friend that I've had never had the privilege of meeting in person, who's over in Hong Kong right now, and I'm on the eastern seaboard of the United States. So we get to use new skills to determine our trustworthiness to each other and who we start to trust coming back at us. So it's an interesting conversation. This has been fantastic. Linda?
Yeah, and it takes me to relationship marketing, because in relationship marketing, you're not doing something because you want something. You're doing something for or with someone else because it's kind of like the right thing to do in the moment. And you think of them and you have nothing to gain. Doing things where you even have absolutely nothing to gain, that's what builds trust with people. It's like, wow, she was really thinking of me. He was really thinking of me. And that's one of the ways that I have always built trust, is like, okay, well, there's something for someone to gain there, but look at that. Like, they had nothing to gain. They didn't have to say that. They didn't have to do that. And seeing that pop up with a certain person, over time, it has a huge impact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, Linda, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to keep the conversation rolling. Go ahead, John, drop in.
Oh, you got power talkers here. I don't think you have to worry about keeping the conversation going. I was just going to say, this is, again, a daily 6 component, which is service to others. I mean, and behaving in a selfless way associated with love and forgiveness, and then being grateful for all things at all times. These are things that help build that credibility and consistency. That's why, I was joking with Terry that I said, well, here's the instruction book, and it's written to be a daily instruction book, because I behaved this way, for 40 years before I started paying attention to maybe I should be more inclusive in the way in which I was a leader. So it takes time, and especially for people who have been sort of focusing on themselves and their success more than the group's success. And this is something you just have to it's hard, but you really have to unlearn that kind of behavior if you want to grow and prosper, because the higher up in an organization you go, the less you actually do on a daily basis to affect the success of the organization. And so everything else is done through relationships. And the higher up you go, the less you do, and the bit more you have to rely on relationships with other people to do what you want them to do. And if you don't have the capacity to build that relationship in an honest way, guess what? Your leadership is really going to tank somewhere along the line reasonably quickly.
So, John, Linda, Terry, and Jenny, then here's a question. Sometimes I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan, but I love the character Sméagol. And the character Sméagol, if you don't know, argues with himself, right? So I find myself sometimes arguing with myself, and I would love to know your thoughts. In that we talk about all these things in leadership. However, many of the arguably most transformative leaders of our lifetimes, including the richest people alive, the ones that are doing incredible things, are diametrically opposed to a lot of what we're talking about. So where is the rub? Is it that we sit around and we have conversations about, the honesty and the humanity and all of those things that make ourselves feel good, when that's not what is supported with success? Or is it something else?
Well, I think I'm not going to be the only person to answer, but I mean, to me, Mahan, it depends on how you want to be perceived. I mean, Steve Jobs was a very wealthy man, but he was perceived in a very benevolent way because of the way in which he acted, even though he was absolutely not like that in real life. But his intention was to be that kind of a person. And so he's remembered that way. Bill Gates is a very wealthy person and remembered in a very positive way. So it's a matter of, what do you value? If, a lot of times when you're successful, I was successful very young in life. And what I had was a very big sense that this was all because of me, not because of you, but because of me. And it wasn't until I changed that realization that it came to the realization. It's like the thing that got Obama in so much trouble, which was, you didn't build that, kind of thing. It was all part of a train, the engine up here and the caboose back here. And it was all part of a train. You're just one of the cars in the middle, driving on a car, driving on the streets, being, having heat, light, and gas, these kinds of things. And you're part of that. And when you realize it's not all me, but I'm a part of it, then it can change. But I mean, there are plenty of wealthy people that, one of them will probably attempt to run for president again. So, there are a whole lot of people out there that are not thinking of others in a way in which we would appreciate. But the downside of high levels of success is that people begin to think of themselves as, I'm the one who created this success. Nobody else helped me. Nobody else did it. I started my own. And that's really incorrect. So, I know what you're talking about, and you're right. It's that way, but in my heart, in my mind, it really shouldn't be.
And another word for your example, John, is that sounds very lonely. And it's interesting when you hear some people share at their deathbed, people who were massively successful, what their gained wisdom is from life. And it's often about connection. It's about the people in their lives. And so often it's about coming back to themselves, not the world's expectations of them and what success should look like. Very often it's about what they valued and found pleasure in as kids. And that's just very interesting. We were having the conversation a couple of lives ago, or maybe it was a week ago, I don't remember. It's also good, about dopamine and serotonin. And what happens in our bodies when we consume, when it's dopamine and it's like, yes, this feels good, I want more, it's just never enough. And how serotonin is about connection, it's about closeness, it's about people. And that brings us the experience of this feels good and it's enough. And that's a great question, Mahan. I'd love to hear your own thoughts on this.
Thank you, Jenny. Terry and Linda, any thoughts on your end?
Well, you can become a dopamine junkie. And, you know, if you gained what Jenny said, if you gained notoriety or whatever as a child, you look for and you seek it out. And after a while, it becomes a driver in your life. And that's when dishonesty starts coming and all those kinds of things, so that you get that feeling again, reinforcement. And no matter what, it's like a drug addict or anyone else, until you look inside of you and say, okay, that is not me. I get to make a change where everything around you starts to change as well, right? Like a drug addict stops hanging out with his drug addict friends. You know, you change what's around you, and you do it for you, not for the high or the lift that you're gaining from it. So that's really kind of cool. We're at the end of our time, and I would. I'm going to.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And I'd like Mahan to respond to that, and we'll start going into some final thoughts. Mahan?
Linda, this is why you are his better half. As much as I like him, you're his better half.
Well, he's mine. We're frosting on each other's cake.
And before I answer that, in case you haven't been to Stockholm, I have to say, Stockholm and Swedes are by far my favorite. Jenny, I spent a ton of time going back and forth there. I love the culture. The part that a lot of people don't understand is the beauty of the Swedish culture. That's it. So when I argue with myself, there are a couple of things that one part of my Schmiegel says, which is many of these people are absolute geniuses and I'm not one, right? So Elon Musk can treat people like crap and get away with it, but he is a freaking genius. I'm not one, and lots of other managers in organizations and CEOs are not there either. So they shouldn't learn from Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or whoever else, who are these geniuses who are extremely flawed individuals to start out with. So that's one thought that I have. Secondarily, what is important is a driver, as to me, as John was saying, in that how do we measure success? Is success the person that makes the most amount of money? Then sure, you maybe can get there by mistreating people still to this day. But if success is redefined possibly as your impact on others, then you would view leadership differently. So, but I do sincerely have this argument with myself, because I see very many examples of people that do well in this world, not listening to what we are talking about, which is why I appreciate these conversations, Linda and Terry.
I love it. Thank you, Mahan. So glad you joined us.
Anyone else? Jenny, John, some final thoughts? Honesty.
Well, I honestly can't think of another thing to say. So I'll just end with thank you. It really is fun. It's always good to see Mahan. I don't get a chance to see him as much because I don't get up to DC as much as I like. But you know, it's this sort of flawed genius kind of thing that Mahan's talking about. And in the first 40 years of my life, I thought it was the guy in front who was the better person. If I was sitting in the front of the plane, I was better than the people sitting in the back of the plane. Not better than or not better off, but better, you know, kind of thing. And that was just ego driven beyond comprehension, you know, blown out of proportion. And once you begin to deflate that ego a little bit, the idea of being honest and being humble, there's a line somewhere in spiritual readings that I've had, which is, if we truly look at ourselves, we cannot be anything but humble, you know? And so for me, it's just realizing that I am a flawed individual. And when my ego takes over, I get in a lot more trouble than when I when I keep it under control. You know?
Nice. What did come up for me when Jane was talking about the dopamine and serotonin is I ran into a gal at one point, and I think I might have been working with her child in special ed. Anyways, so this mom had an addiction to shopping that she was breaking, and she would just like go and fill up like 3 carts at Target and buy everything and bring it all home, and then the next day she'd take it all back. You know, it was just like a way for her to get the dopamine high and then get the serotonin. Like, I have enough, you know, I don't need all of this. It is enough of what I have. And yeah, that was such an interesting pattern that this gal had.
Yeah. Jenny, any final thoughts?
So many. Let me pick one. So honesty, in addition to the conversation, honesty between me and another person will help us find each other. Both of us being authentic means that we will be able to connect. And this is how we lead another person. We meet them where they are. We can only meet people where they are if they are being honest with where they are. And the thing is, the same goes with myself. Me being honest with myself helps me find me where I am, if it's in anger or resentment or pleasure or whatever, grief. To be honest, it creates that inner connection for me to actually lead myself forward, and helps me connect with the people around me as well, for them to find me. And that's how I also get to know myself, that I get to reflect in other people. It's like all of this just brings me to how deeply we are connected. And yes, right. I'm so happy to be part of that. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, John and Mahan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to thank Mahan Tavakoli.
Yeah, that was great.
You know, that's issues with live. You know, you pop in, you pop out, you have connection issues and things. Terrific fellow and colleague of mine, and I love him to death. And thank you, Mahan, for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we brought something for you to think about today and to move forward. Leave your comments below, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Thank you very much for being with us today. Bye for now.